It all started on an ordinary afternoon, when I just wanted to relax at home after a tiring day. I had no idea that this day would completely change my perception of my neighbor, someone I had only considered a silent presence on the other side of the wall. At first it was just polite greetings and small nods in the hallway, but gradually I realized there was something strange about the way he watched me, always with a gaze that carried more weight than mere curiosity. I never imagined that this cordiality hid such disturbing intentions. The turning point came when he decided to make an unexpected proposal, something that seemed straight out of a suspense movie, and immediately put my life on alert. This day, which began so trivially, quickly turned into a story I could never tell without shivers. Get ready, because what you are about to hear is real, and will make you question the trust you place in people around you. In each chapter, I will reveal more details about what happened, how I reacted, and how dangerous it can be if someone you know tries to manipulate you to protect their dark secrets. The first sign. At first, everything seemed normal. The building's routine, neighbors passing by, the distant sound of footsteps in the hallway. My neighbor, whom I had previously considered just a common presence, began paying attention to me in a different way. Small details started to catch my attention. He always seemed to appear out of nowhere, at the exact moment I was distracted, always with a trivial excuse, as if he were interested in casual conversation, but his eyes carried something beyond everyday curiosity. He would make comments that seemed harmless, sometimes praising my routine, sometimes asking about my daily tasks, but there was something strange in his tone, something I couldn't immediately identify. I started noticing small gestures, a smile that lasted a little longer than normal, a pause when mentioning something personal, an insistence on maintaining contact even when I tried to distance myself. Each encounter left a residue of discomfort, but I still tried to rationalize, convincing myself that I was being paranoid. However, realizing that he knew details of my life that I hadn't shared with anyone triggered a silent alarm in my mind. The situation slowly evolved. Small surprises left at my door, enigmatic notes, gestures that seemed kind but carried invisible tension. One day, he handed me a box of homemade cookies. At first, it seemed just a friendly gesture, but inside the box was a note with a short message. "If you need help, I'm here." The tone of that seemingly harmless phrase sounded more like a disguised warning. Gradually, I realized that his attention wasn't casual. He was studying my reactions, analyzing my behaviors, almost like a silent experiment. I still tried to act normally, responding politely, but the sense that something was wrong grew steadily, undermining my peace. Each subsequent encounter reinforced this perception. He would appear at odd hours, comment on situations I hadn't told anyone, ask indirect questions about my habits, almost measuring my limits without me realizing. The tension that began small became palpable, as if our routines were being shaped by a silent game, where I was the target of subtle, almost imperceptible tests. The combination of kindness, persistent attention, and constant observation created a sense of veiled threat, and I began to question his true intentions. What had seemed like friendship or initial courtesy revealed itself as an intricate manipulation game, ready to reach a breaking point. Every detail, every gesture, every word left an alert in my mind, signaling that this simple neighbor was not just a friendly presence, but someone capable of turning my life into a completely unpredictable scenario. And it was in this climate of silent tension that he made his first direct proposal, marking the beginning of an even more disturbing chapter in my life, something I could never have imagined happening in my own neighborhood. The first proposal. It was a rainy afternoon, one of those days when the sound of water hitting the window makes any room quiet and introspective. I was at home, trying to enjoy a moment of rest, when I heard a firm knock on the door. It was him. My neighbor came in without waiting for an invitation, as if he had a natural right to be there, and began speaking calmly, almost rehearsed, trying to make what he was about to propose seem normal. At first, his words seemed innocent, casual conversation, but there was a charged intention behind every syllable, something that made me tense without knowing exactly why. Then he made the proposal. It felt like a punch in the stomach. I initially thought he was joking, a bad prank, but his serious gaze, firm posture, and insistence on explaining the details, even vaguely, showed me it wasn't a joke. The amount of money he mentioned was absurd, enough to tempt anyone instantly, but something inside me triggered an alarm. Something was wrong. He began describing his secret in a nebulous way, hinting at serious consequences if anyone found out, and wanted me to promise absolute discretion. The proposal wasn't just financial, it was a clear attempt to manipulate my emotions, morality, and decision-making ability. He said things like, "You know you can trust me, but this can't leave here," or "Only you can help me keep everything safe," playing on feelings of responsibility and even guilt at the same time. Each sentence was measured to pressure me psychologically, like a test to discover my limits. The tension grew, and I felt my heart race, my hands sweat, and my mind fill with confusing thoughts. What if I accepted? What if I refused? What if refusal triggered a dangerous reaction? He noticed my discomfort and, instead of backing off, seemed to reinforce the persuasive tone, as if he were weaving a web around me, trying to trap me mentally before any physical action. The apartment's atmosphere became heavy, suffocating, and the rain outside seemed to amplify the sense of being isolated, at the mercy of a situation completely out of control. For a few moments, I felt a mix of fear, indignation, and even moral confusion. Accepting that money could solve immediate problems, but it also meant crossing a line I might never come back from. It was a cruel dilemma. Maintain my integrity and take risks, or give in to temptation and become complicit in something I didn't fully understand. At that moment, I realized I was at a breaking point. From that day on, my life would never be the same. He left, leaving an atmosphere charged with tension, an almost suffocating silence, and a clear message. The decision was mine, but the pressure was installed. That moment marked the beginning of a psychological conflict that would last days, maybe weeks, as I tried to process the gravity of what had just happened. Every thought about that proposal seemed to revolve around two words: risk and responsibility. And it was in this climate of rising tension that I began to realize it wasn't just about money, but about emotional manipulation, psychological control, and possibly real danger. The pressure. After the proposal, something completely changed in the dynamics between us. Simply living in the same building now carried a constant tension, as if every hallway, every door knock, and every sound coming from his apartment reminded me of the offer I had received. The visits became more frequent, but not overtly. They were small incursions into my routine, seemingly innocent gestures that, however, carried an invisible weight of pressure. He would appear suddenly in the hallway, asking about my day, about my plans, as if searching for a crack in my mind. Conversations were punctuated with long, silent looks and comments that seemed simple but had hidden intentions, measuring my reactions, probing my emotional state. I began noticing disturbing patterns, times when he coincidentally appeared when I was alone, unnecessary visits that carried subtle messages. One day I noticed that some of my mail had been opened, although nothing was missing. This silent intrusion made me realize that his secret was not just personal, but potentially dangerous, something he was willing to protect at all costs. Each clue I discovered increased both fear and curiosity. There were hints that he involved other people, or at least manipulated external situations to keep the secret safe. I began questioning my interactions with other neighbors, trying to understand if they were also being influenced or observed in some way. The paranoia started to grow, but it wasn't empty paranoia. Every detail I perceived seemed to confirm that he had a plan, that his manipulation wasn't limited to me but was part of a larger network of silent control. The tension increased, and I began mentally documenting every encounter, every phrase, every gesture, seeking a pattern to help anticipate moves and protect my own safety. The situation had become a psychological cat-and-mouse game, where I needed to be more observant, more strategic, to avoid being manipulated or placed in real danger. Temptation, fear, and the need to protect my life intertwined, forming a knot almost impossible to untangle. Each decision became a test of courage, intelligence, and emotional endurance. Disturbing discoveries. While trying to maintain normalcy, I began noticing small inconsistencies, little clues that something was far beyond a mere strange proposal. Photos were out of place, objects changed positions without explanation, and he displayed strange behaviors in front of other neighbors that disappeared as soon as he looked at me. It all indicated that he had far more control over the environment than I had imagined. There were moments when his attention seemed almost clinical. He would watch how I moved, how I responded to seemingly trivial questions, and appeared to mentally record every reaction. The feeling of being studied intensified daily, and I noticed that my own behavior was being shaped by his constant presence. I started noticing strange patterns. Times he appeared coincidentally when I was alone, visits that seemed unnecessary but carried subtle messages. One day, I noticed some of my personal mail had been opened, yet nothing was missing. This silent invasion made me realize his secret was potentially dangerous, something he would protect at all costs. Each clue I uncovered amplified both fear and curiosity. There were signs he might involve other people or manipulate situations to safeguard the secret. My paranoia grew, but it was grounded. Every detail I noticed seemed to confirm his plan. Tension mounted, and I began recording every encounter mentally, seeking patterns to anticipate moves and protect myself. My life had become a psychological battlefield, where intelligence, observation, and strategic action were essential to survive. Attempted manipulation. After the disturbing discoveries, it became clear that my neighbor had crossed any line of normal courtesy or coexistence. He wasn't just trying to buy my silence. He was trying to shape me, manipulate me, and turn me into a useful piece within his game. At first, it was subtle praise, almost imperceptible. He praised my reliability, discretion, and supposed moral qualities, as if building a narrative in which I was a natural ally. These compliments were followed by veiled warnings like, "People can get hurt when they talk too much," or "It's important to know how to keep secrets." Each word was placed like a chess piece, positioning me for complicity. I realized he alternated between exaggerated kindness and dark insinuations, creating an emotional cycle. First, he made me feel special, then subtly reminded me that my safety depended on my silence. This manipulation was far more sophisticated than simple blackmail. It aimed to make me emotionally dependent on his narrative. He used phrases like, "You don't know how much I trust you," or "You are the only one who can help me," playing on empathy and threat simultaneously. One day, he appeared at my door looking despondent, claiming he had no one else to trust, implying that if I didn't help, something terrible would happen. The dramatization caught me off guard. For a moment, I felt compassion, but soon realized it was part of a premeditated script designed to evoke empathy and break my defenses. The most frightening part was his calmness, as if manipulating people and situations was routine. I also noticed he knew aspects of my life I hadn't shared, used subtly as leverage. This feeling of exposure became almost unbearable, turning my home into a psychological trap. Each visit was a test, observing body language, breathing, pauses, seeking weaknesses. I had to remain calm, control expressions, and hide fear, because any sign of weakness could be exploited. This forced coexistence transformed my routine into a mental battlefield. The manipulation became more sophisticated every day, leaving notes, subtle gifts, small offers of help that were more about control than generosity. The theme of the secret was always present, casting a shadow over every conversation. I realized the manipulation wasn't just about keeping me silent. It was to make me useful to his plan. This realization was a turning point. It was no longer just refusing money or keeping a secret. It was resisting an attempt to turn me into an extension of him, completely controlled. Inner conflict. After realizing the extent of the manipulation, my mind became a constant battlefield. Every decision seemed to carry profound consequences, and each interaction reinforced the sense of being relentlessly tested. On one hand, there was temptation, the money offered, the promise of safety, and the possibility of momentarily ending the tension. On the other, there was fear and awareness that accepting would cross a moral line from which I might never return, making me complicit in something I still didn't fully understand. For days, I replayed every sentence, gesture, and look in my mind, trying to decipher hidden intentions, identify behavior patterns, and anticipate consequences. The internal conflict was intense. Reason told me to refuse any involvement, but psychological pressure and emotional manipulation chipped away at my resolve. Paranoia infiltrated my routine. I saw signs where they may not exist, analyzed interactions with neighbors as potential traps, and questioned my ability to assess the situation correctly. Every decision about speaking or remaining silent, acting or waiting became torturous, and I realized my mind was being molded by his presence. At the same time, I felt intense emotional pressure, as if the responsibility for his secret rested on me. He had made me feel guilty, responsible, and paradoxically, necessary for his safety. This mix of guilt, fear, and curiosity caused sleepless nights, recurring thoughts, and constant tension. My heart raced randomly, as if every hallway step could signal his presence. The inner conflict reshaped me, influencing my responses, habits, and perception of security. I realized I needed balance, resist manipulation, protect integrity, and remain cautious to avoid triggering unpredictable actions from him. Temptation, fear, and the need to protect myself intertwined, forming an almost impossible knot. Each decision became a test of courage, intelligence, and emotional endurance. The escalation of danger. With the internal conflict consuming my mind, I realized that the situation with my neighbor wasn't just ongoing. It was escalating in a frightening way. He began showing more aggressive subtleties, mixing gestures of kindness with veiled threats, creating a constant tension that eroded my peace. Every time I noticed something out of place or heard signs of his presence in the hallways, it felt like stepping into an invisible trap, a territory where each step could have serious consequences. He started leaving enigmatic messages, short notes, almost imperceptible, suggesting he was always watching and that any wrong decision could be harmful. The feeling of constant surveillance became suffocating. At the same time, his visits became more unpredictable, appearing at unexpected hours with seemingly innocent excuses, carefully calculated to increase emotional tension. Occasionally, he commented on events I hadn't told anyone about, reinforcing the idea that my private space no longer existed. The psychological pressure manifested physically: sleepless nights, difficulty concentrating, heightened anxiety, and a constant state of alert. Any unusual sound made my heart race, as if preparing me for an imminent confrontation. The danger wasn't just psychological. His manipulation affected my entire routine, creating a constant environment of instability. I began planning strategies for mental and emotional defense, trying to stay calm, control reactions, and document every suspicious behavior in case I needed to take action safely. I realized the situation required more than resistance. It demanded intelligence, patience, and courage to withstand the pressure. Each gesture of his seemed to test my strength, nervousness, and ability to stay firm without revealing weakness. Understanding this reality increased my determination not to give in, but also amplified anxiety, creating an emotional paradox that kept me constantly on edge. Every interaction, every gesture, every silence became part of a grand test, requiring clarity, strategy, and resolve, because any mistake could be exploited with unpredictable consequences. Seeking help. With the escalation of danger, I realized I could no longer face the situation alone. The psychological pressure and constant manipulation had made my routine unbearable, and every day increased the risk that a mistake could have serious consequences. I decided to seek help from someone I trusted deeply, a close friend who could understand the severity of the situation and guide me without judgment. Talking to someone brought immediate relief. I was no longer alone in facing a calculating neighbor who always seemed one step ahead. I began recounting everything in detail, from enigmatic notes and unexpected visits to veiled threats and subtle comments that played with my mind. Speaking it aloud allowed me to see patterns I hadn't noticed before. My friend helped me analyze each detail, understand the scope of the psychological manipulation, and structure a defense strategy. We decided it was crucial to document each incident carefully, maintaining evidence in case authorities needed to be involved or more rigorous protective measures were required. This documentation gave me both security and clarity, helping separate fear from objective reality. I started planning strategic responses for future interactions, avoiding direct confrontation, but making it clear I would not give in to pressure. I also realized the importance of protecting my personal space, adjusting routines to reduce vulnerability and increase my sense of security. Every move became carefully calculated, entering and leaving the building, times when I would be alone, ways to avoid unexpected encounters or emotional traps. This mental preparation required discipline, but gradually I felt I was regaining part of the control I had lost. The confrontation, the inevitable moment arrived. I had to confront my neighbor directly. The tension accumulated over days and weeks had reached an unbearable point, and any hesitation could mean losing control of the situation. I carefully planned the encounter, choosing a time when I could remain calm and clear-headed, minimizing risks. When he appeared at my door, his usual smile was gone. There was seriousness in his gaze, confirming he also felt the tension of the moment. He spoke calmly, as always, but the subtlety of his words carried intention, trying again to place me in the position of accomplice, confidant to a secret I should never know. During the confrontation, he revealed more details about his secret, always in a veiled way, creating a narrative of urgency and fear aimed at emotionally coercing me. This time, however, I was prepared. I maintained posture, breathed deeply, and used the strategy I had planned. I spoke firmly, setting clear boundaries, expressing that I would not be manipulated and that my silence could not be bought. He tried again to play with guilt and responsibility, insinuating serious consequences if I did not cooperate. But I realized his attempts were increasingly obvious, almost desperate. It was a silent psychological duel, he trying to bend me emotionally, me resisting and maintaining rational control. With every sentence, I assessed his behavior, analyzed his gestures and responses, and remained firm to avoid revealing fear. He realized my behavior had changed. My clear, strategic resistance made him less confident. For the first time, I felt I had regained part of the control I seemed to have lost, and he needed to reconsider his approach. The confrontation revealed an important truth. He depended on my fear and insecurity to maintain his power. By demonstrating clarity, firmness, and awareness, I managed to partially invert the psychological balance, showing I would not be manipulated. Tension remained high, but I felt I had created an invisible boundary, a limit he could not cross without unpredictable consequences. The final decision. After the confrontation, it became clear that there was no more room for doubt or hesitation. The tension accumulated over weeks and months had reached a critical point, and I needed to make a definitive decision about how to handle my neighbor and the secret he was desperate to protect. For days, I analyzed every interaction, gesture, note, and comment, reflecting on the impact allowing his manipulation would have on my life, peace, and emotional safety. I realized I could not engage with his secret in any way. Accepting the proposal would not only mean yielding to blackmail, but becoming complicit in something potentially dangerous with serious and irreversible consequences. Definitively refusing was the only way to preserve my integrity, safety, and mental health. By making this decision, I also established protective strategies, adjusting routines, controlling my schedule, being careful with interactions, and maintaining vigilance for any signs of suspicious behavior. The goal was to maintain distance without triggering direct confrontations that could create additional risks. The final decision didn't just mean saying no to him, it meant affirming my boundaries, reclaiming autonomy, and protecting myself from future attempts at manipulation. With this stance, the dynamics between us changed. He realized I was no longer an easy target, that my resistance could not be broken by veiled threats or manipulative gestures. This brought relief but also reinforced the need to remain vigilant, aware that he might try another approach. At the same time, the experience taught profound lessons about trust, boundaries, and human perception. I learned that seemingly ordinary people can hide dangerous intentions, and that identifying manipulation signals before they escalate is essential. The final decision was thus a point of liberation. I established clear limits, regained emotional security, and determined that protecting my integrity came above any financial temptation or psychological pressure. This story shows that even in seemingly ordinary situations, life can place ordinary people in extraordinary dilemmas, where trust, courage, and strategy are essential to protect one's integrity. Facing my neighbor, I learned that subtle manipulation signals should never be ignored, personal boundaries must be firmly established, and emotional control can be maintained even under intense pressure. Every decision, step, and reaction shaped the outcome, proving that conscious resistance and seeking support can transform fear and vulnerability into strength and clarity. If you've experienced something similar or know someone under psychological pressure, share your story in the comments. Together we can create a supportive community and learn from each other when facing unexpected challenges. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more real-life accounts full of suspense, mystery, and tension, like the video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Activate notifications to receive updates on new videos, and comment on the moment that impacted you the most. Life can be as intense as any suspense story, and being prepared, vigilant, and aware of your limits is the best way to face unexpected challenges.